Welcome to our Sunday evening service at 6:30. Tonight we continue reading John chapter 15 from verse 12. I'm delighted that Phil Paulett Jackson will be reading and sharing thoughts from that chapter. And at the end of the service, I'll be giving you some information about times when the church will be open for prayer this week. Let's begin with two songs of praise to our Lord Jesus.
Here is love, vast as the ocean, loving kindness as the flood. When the Prince of Life, our ransom, shed for
This evening's reading is taken from John 15, 12 to 27. This is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, that someone lay down his life for his friends. You are my friends, if you do what I command you. No longer do I call you servants, for the servant does not know what his master is doing, but I have called you friends, for all that I have heard from my Father I have made known to you. You did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you that you should go and bear fruit, and that your fruit should abide, so that whatever you ask the Father in my name, he may give it to you. These things I command you, so that you will love one another. If the world hates you, know that it has hated me before it hated you. If you were of the world would love you as its own. But because you are not of the world, but I chose you out of the world, therefore the world hates you. Remember the word that I said to you? A servant is not greater than his master. If they persecuted me, they will also persecute you. If they kept my word, they will also keep yours. But all these things they will do to you on account of my name, because they do not know him who sent me. If I had not come and spoken to them, they would not be guilty of sin, but now they have no excuse for their sin. Whoever hates me hates my Father also. If I had not done among them the works that no one else did, they would not be guilty of sin. But now that they have seen and hated both me and my Father, but the word that is written in their law must be fulfilled. They hated me without a cause. But when the Helper comes, whom I will send to you from the Father, the Spirit of truth, who proceeds from the Father, he will bear witness about me. And you also will bear witness, because you have been with me from the beginning. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Okay, good evening, St Mark's. Here we are. So we're in the middle of a series on the departure discourses. So this is Jesus telling his disciples before he's left, he's going to leave. And he's telling them what they need to know for the time when he's not there. So it's this grand commissioning. So we've done 2 sermons, and then there's going to be a few more, and then we're going to do a series in 1 Corinthians. So this whole series is about church. It's about what is church. So before church was even invented, Jesus is saying, this is going to happen, get ready, and then we're going to look at the church. And so, yeah, and it's an extraordinary time to be doing this at a time when it's very hard to be church because we're so spread apart, and here I am talking to a computer as church. So really interesting, and maybe we could think about what's this bringing up in us, and how do we think about this, and how do we think about this whole series where maybe I'm not going to provide the answer, but maybe through the series of this we will. So I think that we're looking at what the anatomy of the church is. What are the parts and how do they relate to the whole? What am I and what are we? So it's about what are we. And so last week, 2 weeks ago, it was Pentecost, and Steve told us about the Paraclete. And this is the Holy Spirit's going to come, and much more than this being the departure narrative, Steve said this is the staying discourse. This is how actually Jesus is going away, but he is staying because the Spirit is staying. There's an enduring part of this. The Spirit, they don't know what this is yet, is going to come. And then last week, Alistair told us about the vine, and through commands, connection and cooperation, we are in the vine. And this metaphor endures all the way through, and I think has been really helpful to me. Think of this, thinking of us, think of all of the people that are at the evening service. We are a part of this organic, tendrilled grapevine, and it's all kind of connected to each other. And so then to this week, we've had the passage, and the main point is probably love one another. But kind of what that means is fairly self-evident, love one another, but what it means to do it is totally contextual. And so then it's interesting to say, well, what does it mean as part of being a part of the vine? So we are all these bits, then there's this whole vine, and it's held together by love one another so that the Spirit can abide in our unity. And then next week, John's going to tell us about elaborating on how the Spirit works to convict and to reveal. The week after that, Charlie's going to talk about how this thing, this vine thing, this church thing that's coming into being is like a mother birthing a thing. The week after that is then the high priestly prayer. So Jesus is like telling them this is what's going to happen, and then he prays for us. So over 2 weeks, Sebastian's going to say how Jesus prays for the bunch of disciples there who are going to become the first church. He prays for them unity, and that unity is the big deal. The big deal, and then David, the following week, is going to say how not only for these present, but for those who believe after them, hearing what they said, pray that they would also be united. Unity, unity, unity is the kind of like, as if Jesus, like looking 2,000 years ahead, thinks, I think the prayer they need is for unity. So unity, unity, unity. The question of what is church? Well, it's contested unity. And then the week after that, we go into Corinthians. And in Corinthians is Paul writing to a divided church about how to be united. And you're going to get that for like 8 weeks. So Josephine is going to talk about, to the church of God in Corinth, to be saints together. Saints together. It's about the togethering. It's about the one anothering. Then following that, Catherine's going to tell us about a church dividing about those who follow Paul, those who follow Apollos. Mark's going to tell us about the church dividing around those who think that folly is this and those who think that folly is that. Steve will then pick up the biology metaphor again, those that I sowed, and then like this idea that we're a plant. The church is this viney thing, that metaphor keeps coming up. And then after that, Samuel's going to tell us about those dividing over the body-soul dualism. Caroline's going to tell us about churches dividing over legal disputes. Charlie's going to tell us about the church dividing through divorce, or through marriage, or through circumcision theologies. Leandra's going to tell us about the church dividing about the mature not looking after the immature, and Eppie's going to tell us about the church dividing around paid and unpaid contributions to the thing. So all throughout, it seems like we're thinking about church at peril of it dividing. So it's interesting to think about how love one another, today's sermon, fits into this whole. And I think I'm not really going to answer what does it mean to love one another. I'm interested in maybe a Zoom call later to talk about how do we do the doing of this? How can we maybe look at being part of mutual aid for one another? How could we look at an inventory of how we divide, and then how do we overcome that division by loving one another? And I think this is all the more needed right now, and the people protesting the various tribalizing ways that the world is dividing, the idea that the church would be this mysterious unity, that is what we're called to, that is what the church is. So, there's sort of 4 points. Love, me as me, we as we, and then the Spirit. So love one another. I kind of think it's self-evident, as I say. So let's just do the doing of loving one another. But in the passage, it gives a few hints about what that might be. Loving one another has to do with one another, has to do with, and we do that modelled on as God loved us. And that one anothering, as God loves, is this idea that God is love, because there is a one anothering within God. So if you want to know how to do love one another, look at how God loves, like the Father loves the Son, the Spirit loves Jesus, this community that pre-exists, and out of the overflow of that, he loves creation. And so the church, if it believes in this Trinity, has this idea that we're a multi-personal group loving one another, and out of the overflow we love the world. Friendship, so he says, I didn't call you servants but friends, and there's a deep, rich, have a theology of friendship, have a who I don't know, I can't, it would be good to pray into the experience of being a friend of God, and he begins to unpack that in terms of how it's to do with access to the mind of God, it's to do with revealing behind the veil. And then ultimately, love is laying down your life. So as I have loved you, and then greater love, this is the bar. But again, I don't know, Hollywood knows this, we all know this, we know this, and so then the idea is then where is the context at which we can do that? And I think within the idea of me and then we, there is a big picture vision of what I might lay my life down for to create something that endures. So who am I? I think this passage today thinks of, like, it's interesting that that John, or like Jesus, uses this rhetorical device of not this but that 3 times. So he says, "You're not servants. I don't call you servants. I call you friends." And so I, as this cell in the vine, I as a part of the organism, my identity is one of a friend of God and not a servant. So that is one aspect of being a cell, and that is like he's saying this to commission them to do this thing. So this is your identity. You are a friend. You're not a servant. You're not a sort of like little meat robot drone who just gets sent instructions. You are a friend. You have access to the back of house. You know the big picture. That access is what makes you a good, that is something which contributes to your active participation in the vine, is knowing that you are a friend and not just a sort of little machine. Second, you didn't choose God, I chose you. So again, it's not this but that, like almost to like this, like not this but that is like knowing that we're probably like, oh well, that's a little bit me, but like totally it is what you have received. So that is humbling. There's no basis for pride in that. And then he couples this. So he couples this being chosenness twice. One is that being chosen leads to bearing fruit, and one is being chosen leads to being hated. So it, like twice in the passage he says you're chosen, and in the 2 cases, one, you're chosen to bear fruit. So I am the chosen one. Like in this thing, the idea of being a part of this vine, what does it mean to be a good part of this vine? A good little active part of this is one that knows they're a friend of God and knows behind the scenes and able to know the big picture of what this vine is about. And second is like chosen. Like, so you didn't like opt into this vine, it chose you, and you're the chosen one. And that chosen one is what leads you to bear fruit. That sense of like privileged, distinct, purposed, commissioned, you have a purpose for this. God picked you to do something, so that is what leads to bearing fruit. That kind of bubbles up in you and leads to bearing fruit. And then being chosen leads to being hated by the world. And that is, I guess that's also true in that like the way that like we want to cut down the tallest poppy, etc. There is a sense that we need to wrestle with the uneasiness of being chosen, as that it marks you out, and then it is to be redeemed in that we are a club that exists for the benefit of its non-members. We are chosen in order to overflow. Like the fact that there on this earth there are people chosen to be agents of the good should be conspicuous by its like. Thank goodness there are people who are putting their hand up, putting their head above the parapet to say, I've been chosen for this task, and the task is ultimately to die for the good of the world. But the idea that people would take that stand and not kind of be just part of the entropic flow downstream and would stand for something in an identity of being a chosen one will lead to being hated. So in this vine, you are a friend of God, you are a chosen one, and you have been, you are not of the world, you are chosen out of the world. So again, this vine has distinction, it has thinghood, it doesn't like, there's not a gradient and then you're kind of a little bit in this and a little bit in that. There's something that you have to be like all in. There isn't a sort of part-time rota for membership of this vine. And so you're not of the world, you have kind of, and then and this membership of this organism that you're a part of is an all-in affair. So, what is love? Who am I? I'm a friend of God, I am chosen, and I am chosen out of the world to membership of this thing. So then, thirdly, what are we? What is this collective? So, this thing that church is this kit of parts of many Christians. So you just coagulate a load of Christians and somehow you have church. It's not the same. It's not just like a pile of twigs somehow becomes a tree. There is some gelling agent which makes it more than the sum of its parts. And then what is it when it's more than the sum of its parts? It is this cathedral edifice. It is a thing that has structure and subsidiarity and purposed architecture to its being, this complex of parts. And what that thing as a whole is, because Jesus is going away, the thing that's left, the sum of parts, is the body of Jesus in the world. It's his hands, it's his feet, and to some extent you as an individual are that, but I think it's misguided to put too much prominence on that. Actually, we're much more a reflection of Jesus in his complex fullness if we self-understand ourselves as but a part within a really rich body of many specialists and a coordinated set of those things. And in this passage, it offers a number of things of how we are that extension of God. So there is I'll just run through them. So in verse 12, we love as he loves. So love as he has loved us. So again, this multi-personal vine that we are does a loving in the way that, like, it is the extension of God's multi-personal love in the way it is in the world. Verse 18, hated as he was hated. So again, Christ, when he was embodied, was hated, and to some extent you could be hated personally, but actually there's this sense of, because of your membership in this body, they hate not something specific that you've done, but there's an aversion to this supernatural, multi-personal body that you're a part of. Then, as God, we're in verse 26 to bear witness as he bears witness. So again, so the Spirit is there bearing witness, and we are bearing witness. So again, Jesus is telling his disciples, I'm going away, you're going to be me in the world. As the Spirit bears witness, then you are the bearing witness. You are the shop front. You are the display of this thing. Just as the Spirit reveals that which is unseen, you display that which is unseen. Then we do all this in his name. So verse 16, ask in his name. And then verse 21, you'll be persecuted in his name. And then in verse 20, you are a servant's master, you are a master's servant, this sort of ambassador to a thing. So in all these ways, this idea that this vine is God. It is the theophany. It is the incarnation of the infinite personal God of love that created the universe. Here it is. You want to know God, know this vine, know it in the community, this thing that's bearing fruit, that's loving these people. That is how they know God's name. That is how they encounter God. And lastly, in the passage, when it says this must be like the law about, says in it prophesied about God that they would hate Jesus without cause, so they'll hate you without cause. Again, prophecies that were about Jesus are now about you as a whole, that in the same way, those things are about you. So then lastly, the Spirit. So love one another. Love one another. You are a part in this vine. This vine is the embodiment of God in the world, and almost like the sap that flows through that vine is the Spirit. And the way that I think of this is like if you made a jug out of Lego, we are these Lego bricks, and the Spirit fills that jug, and you need all the pieces, and you need them to hold in this watertight sense. Like, obviously, individual pieces, when you turn them upside down, there is a void, and you could put some Spirit into that, and that's not invalid. But this idea that we create this vessel between ourselves, and so the helper that Jesus is promising. So again, this is before Jesus has gone away. When I go away, you're going to get a helper. Partly, you're going to need a helper, and partly the flow of the helper in it is the whole point. So so on the one hand, you're going to need a helper to bear fruit. So ask for your Father, and he will help you bear fruit. So this idea that we're a vine, like what could become a clique, a club unto itself, actually exists to bear fruit, to bless beyond itself. And then second is when the helper comes, he will bear witness so that you will bear witness. So there's again, so the helper comes to help you bear fruit and to bear witness. And you're going to need this. So the idea that Jesus is calling us to do this thing, he's calling you to do this thing that is impossible. So again, kind of it should be intimidating, and then it should be a deep comfort that we know that we have that helper who will help us bear fruit and bear witness. So, I guess that's it, basically. For the next couple of months, we're going to be thinking about what is church. I encourage us to think of that vine, and I've not been very practical in offering us this is what the vine is, or this is how we do the doing of it. But I'd invite that as we group in small groups, as we come together and think about how we can be more than the sum of our parts, relationally, financially, on mission, doing a thing that's bigger than individually we could do, the glue that holds that together is loving one another. And it's an open question. So yes, I'm suggesting a Zoom call. I will make a link. As if we were having tea and coffee afterwards. I will be available. That's it. Thanks for listening. This has been a unique experience.
O church, arise and put your armor on. Hear the call of Christ our captain. For now the weak can say that they are strong in the strength that God has given. With shield of faith and belt of truth, we'll stand against the devil's lies. An army bold, whose battle cry is love, reaching out to those in darkness. A call to war, to love the captive soul, but to rage against the captor. And with the sword that makes the wounded whole, we will fight with faith and valor. When faced with trials on every side, we know the outcome is secure, and Christ will have the prize for which he died, an inheritance of nations. Come see the cross where love and mercy meet, as the Son of God is stricken. Then see his foes lie crushed beneath his feet, for the conqueror has risen. And as the stone is rolled away, and Christ emerges from the grave, this victory march continues till the day every eye and heart shall see him. So Spirit, come, put strength in every stride, give grace for every hurdle, that we may run with faith to win the prize of a servant good and faithful. As saints of old still line the way, retelling triumphs of his grace, we hear the calls and hunger for the day them set our hearts ablaze with hope, like wildfire in our very souls. Holy Spirit, come, invade us now. We are your church. We need your power in us. We seek your kingdom first. We hunger and we thirst. Refuse to waste our lives, for you're our joy and prize. To see the captive hearts released, the hurt, the sick, the poor at peace. We lay down our lives for heaven's cause. We are your church. We pray, revive this earth. Build your kingdom here. Let the darkness fear. Show your mighty hand. Heal our streets and land. Set your church on fire. Win this nation back. Change the atmosphere. Build your kingdom here. We pray. Unleash your kingdom's power, reaching the near and far. No force of hell can stop your beauty changing hearts. You made us for much more than this. Awake the kingdom seed in us. Fill us with the strength and love of Christ. We are your church. We are the hope on earth. Build your kingdom here. Let the darkness fear. Show your mighty hand. Heal our streets and land. Set your church on fire. Win this nation back. Change the atmosphere. Build your kingdom here. We pray.
Amen. Well, as you had a brief glimpse at the beginning of the service with those notice boards of the doors of the church opening, let me explain to you the opportunities we have to pray in person in the church this week. This week I will be continuing the morning prayers on the steps of the church. Up to 6 people can join me. If we're more than 6, we'll break into smaller groups. Tuesday to Friday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, between 7 and 7:30 outside the church. And then from Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, the church will be open. The doors will be open from 7:30 till 8:30 in the morning and from 5:30 to 6:30 in the evening. The the regulations issued by the government and the church authorities are that we can't yet have proper formal services, but individuals can come into church and pray quietly, privately, on their own. Now, of course, you can pray quietly, privately, on your own at home, but it may be that there would be some who would be helped by being back in this building. So Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, 7:30 to 8:30, 5:30 to 6:30, the church will be open for that opportunity to pray. And if you want to pray with me, 7 o'clock to 7:30 on the steps of the church. This is something I've discussed with David and Sebastian as church wardens. They've got a message for you to endorse this now.
Good morning, St Mark's. It's lovely to give you this welcome this morning. We are here in the Vicarage Garden having a meeting to discuss returning to normality. We don't know when this is going to happen, but we do know that things are easing up even this week. And we want to encourage you as we listen to the guidance that's coming from government, as we hear guidance from the church family, that we start to explore ways of returning to some degree of normality. And this week I would just encourage you to continue to pray for Steve, for the church family, as we explore the options to make this possible. This week, if you are able to come for morning prayer or one of the other opportunities for personal prayer, do come and see what's been set up for you. We're creating a safe space, and we'd love you to re-emerge, to come back and to enjoy the church space, the churchyard. We've got a prayer walk that you can use, walking around the church buildings. There's opportunities to meet in small numbers. We'd love to see you if that opportunity is something that you'd like this week. And I do hope that you're all doing well at this time. God bless.
Yeah, and I just want to take this opportunity to thank Steve, but also the other members of staff. So we want to think about Caroline and Sherry and Eppie and Leandra. We know you've been working so hard behind the scenes, and as a church, we just want to say a really big thank you and a thumbs up for what you've done for the church and for St Mark's.